All right, folks, sit back and enjoy. We got a great one here for you today. We are going to rank the catalog of Rush. And to do that, I'm bringing in none other than Mr. Thom Jennings. Welcome.
Welcome. It's always nice to be here, Joey. Thanks so much for having me, as always.
Yeah, so this was your idea to come up with Rush, and I've been dying for this one myself. I just didn't know when exactly we were going to get to it. But man, going back and listening to this catalog again, man, oh man, brings back so many memories. Just a great catalog. And for those who ever had the pleasure of seeing this band live, nothing quite like it. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, 100%. I agree with both statements. It was very interesting going back, and it's such a rich catalog. It Rush seemed to have like these different eras. I think there's on some level to oversimplify, everything before moving pictures and everything afterwards, but it's about four very distinct eras in terms of how they changed musically, and some of them are like around the same time as live albums, up to All the World's a Stage, and then post that, and then Exit Stage Left, and Show of Hands, all that. But yeah, man, I was listening to some of these records, and I was like, wow, this is some good stuff. For as many records as they managed to put out, it's pretty amazing.
Yep, man. Since they did put out quite a few, what we're gonna do here is we're just gonna rank our top 10.
Yeah.
I have to admit, there's about three albums that I couldn't believe aren't in my top 10, but that's just because there's just no room for them. It's unbelievable how many great albums they put out over the course of time here.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, maybe the top three or four could be fairly stable, but this is the kind of band where, you could go back in 6 months and listen to these again, and it could change. It just is. You're right. There's a lot of stuff in here that's just really good, and it's yeah. Sometimes it just depends on when you hear it, but man, to put out 19 records over what 40 years and always move forward. They had an incredible career.
Yeah, you can't take it away from them, from a
Yeah.
that is from Canada, foreign soil here, and they managed a good long run of platinum U.S. albums, which, at the time when they first started off, no one would have ever predicted the kind of run that they actually had. You go from 2112, that was their first platinum album. Fly By Night went platinum later on, so it did. But 2112 was the album that really broke them, and then man, I'm not sure how many in a row it is, but they've had platinum albums right up into Test for Echo, which only went gold. But man, unbelievable run. Actually,
Yeah.
Counterparts, I'm sorry. Counterparts only went gold. But yeah, so yeah, we're going to talk a lot of Rush here. So we're going to reminisce here. Let's go back and start off with what your number 10 album is today.
My number 10. Well, my number 10 is actually their final record. And I will say, you mentioned about seeing Rush live. First time I saw him was on the Moving Pictures tour, and so that's a very sentimental. That record is a very sentimental favorite of mine. Um, but yeah, my first choice, number 10, written on this fancy piece of notebook paper that you can hear crinkling in the background, is Clockwork Angels. And final record, great songs on it. Caravan opens it up, The Garden closes it, and I don't know, just a very strong finish for the band. I think it kind of came at a point where people weren't necessarily expecting any more studio albums from Rush, and a lot of bands can just become a heritage act and not have to worry about putting out any new music. But this was their swan song, and man, it was a great way to go out.
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely compared to their final albums before that one, it was more like an upswing, and it definitely brought it to a good ending. Obviously, I don't know for sure if they knew that was going to be the last one, but obviously it turned out to be because of everything that transpired after. But for that to be a final album, that was a good way to go out because a lot of bands, it seems like if you look at these legacy acts, they always seem to put out weaker material as time goes on, and it just ends up not being anything you ever usually play again. But Rush was always known in concert for doing like 75% of the album live. So when you went to go see that Clockwork Angels tour, you knew you were going to get about 75% of those songs in the concert. And I saw that show, and that tour did not disappoint. Did not disappoint.
Yeah, I saw that show as well. And I mean, you mentioned just seeing Rush live. I mean, for three performers, and they never had anybody else supplementing their sound on stage. They were incredible. I mean, they had such a big sound, and of course, just witnessing them performing was such a treat. It really was. I mean, I think the other thing was the chemistry between them. They were three guys that just kind of enjoyed their time together, both on stage and off.
Yep, definitely. So for me, Clockwork Angels didn't make my top 10, but obviously it's far from the worst Rush album for me. All
Well,
right, so
we're known to deviate on occasion, Joey.
yeah.
So let's see what you got for number 10.
So my number 10 is probably going to surprise a lot of people, but we're going to go 2112, believe it or not. I love the first side, obviously. The song 2112 has all those parts to it. Takes up the whole side. But you get over to the second side, and that's kind of why it wasn't for me. It wasn't as good as some of their other albums, just because the other albums had better material. A Passage to Bangkok would be my deep cut, which I really enjoy. But other than that, I'm not really. Side two doesn't really do anything for me. So that's my
Well,
take on the album. But instrumentation wise, man, what a great song 2112 is. That's for sure.
yeah, I actually, and again, we're doing this a little differently. Where I'm going to tell you where they're on my list. They are number 2, Dose.
Ooh,
So,
all right.
I think it's a very important album in Rush's canon too. It's
It
an album,
is.
like you said, it was the first one that really introduced them to the masses. Um, I don't know, the only song to me that's maybe even a moderate dud. I mean, on side 2 you were talking about, I think Passage to Bangkok. I love the Twilight Zone, but I was a huge fan of the television show, so that's probably why I like that. Something for Nothing is okay. I mean, Lessons, Tears. I get what you're saying in terms of the drop off between side 1 and side 2, but I think that side 1 or side 2 on its own would certainly not be anywhere near as bad as like Test for Echo, the whole album.
Oh,
But
you're not ragging on Test for Echo already, are you? Oh God.
I am. I
Oh
am.
boy.
Somebody's got to do. I think we have a tradition in these ranking shows is that there's always one album that I just completely crap all over, and that's going to be
Yeah,
my
well,
one to crap.
I could think of two other ones way worse than that one. So, but that might be the only time Test for Echo gets met. Well, I guess not, considering you always bring it up a few times throughout your
Well,
episode.
I'll
Uh,
try to be. I'll try to be good.
all right. Anything else to add to 2112?
Oh, that 12-string acoustic breakdown. Oh my gosh, just some of the guitar playing. I mean, and it showed up in their live sets. Overture. I mean, I mean, I don't know. There's so many layers to it. It's just a beautifully written piece of music. I would say the only other like one side song that I could say is even comparable in terms of quality is probably Close to the Edge by Yes.
Okay, fair enough. It's a good statement. All right, so moving on, let's get your number 9.
Number 9, Presto. Now
Okay.
here's a Rush album that does not get the love that it deserves. Presto. And if it's not on your list, I won't necessarily be surprised because it really doesn't show up on a lot of top 10 lists. But I think that I don't know. It's just, I mean, the big song on it was "Show Don't Tell," but I think this album's got it's got a lot of oomph to it.
I guess that's what they're debating about too, huh?
Yeah, I had to mute because otherwise the dogs would be like Presto, ruff, 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 ruff. Yeah, they
Well,
make their
just
appearances to a lot of the different shows I'm at. But yeah, I really love this record. I think sonically it just sounds fantastic. I don't know. It came out at a time where maybe Rush wasn't as on top of the world as they were at different parts of their career. But man, it's a good album to drive to. It's a good album to kind of listen to in your headphones, and turn up in your music room. So number 9, Test for Echo.
You said Presto.
Oh, sorry. Presto. I see. I told you I wouldn't say Test for Echo anymore. Echo,
You got
echo.
the song
Yeah,
stuck in
I
your
got
head now.
Presto. Well, it's weird. It's like syllabically. I don't know. It's syllab. I don't even know if that's a word.
Vertigo.
All right. Presto.
All right.
Not Test for Echo, but they both end with O.
Okay. Well, Presto doesn't make my top 10. But I will say this, it came close. It came very close. So since we're mentioning the album real quick, I will say my favorite song on the album is The Pass, and I would say probably the underrated track would probably be Presto, I think. I think the title cut is definitely deserving of that.
Oh yeah,
Show Don't Tell
I'll
was
agree. I'll agree 100% with you on that one. I think the title cut is killer, and I think that's what kind of put it over the edge for me. I love that song.
especially when you wave your magic wand, right?
Yes.
All right, so there we go for number 9 for Thom, and for me, my number 9 is actually going to be an album that came out in 1982.
Ooh.
Subdivisions. We're talking Signals. Um, this album probably was because I was young. I didn't really get to listen to classic rock or rock as they say. I started listening to about it when this album came out. So this album is a little bit special for the band for me. And they did get a lot of airplay. And as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, New World Man, isn't that still their highest charting single? Even though it didn't go that high.
Yeah,
But
it may be. Maybe.
yeah. But so Signals, came out at a time when the band kind of changed. They did a shift again following Moving Pictures. This is the album that followed up, and Moving Pictures was so well received. To come back with Signals, it did kind of leave a bad taste in some people's mouths. Unfortunately, everybody's a critic, right? No, but not in mine. I like this album. I would say my favorite cut is going to be none other than the Analog Kid, just a kick-ass song. And I was fortunate enough to see them play that one live because they didn't always play it live, so I was glad I did get to see that. And probably the underrated song is probably Digital Man for me. I love Subdivisions, don't get me wrong, but I just love the Analog Kid a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think this album it didn't make my list, but it didn't make it because I hate it. I mean, I love this album, but it's it is a difficult album when you compare it to Moving Pictures. I mean that Moving Pictures was such an incredible record. I mean, how do you even follow that up? And I think it was, and bands, they really, I mean, you and I have discussed even like with REO Speedwagon. So the follow up to High Infidelity was Good Trouble, which really wasn't a horrible album, but the problem is that it was the follow up to High Infidelity. So it often is compared to that. And I think like the first Asia album, Alpha was the one that was next to it. And whereas like Asia and REO Speedwagon, they kind of tried to use the same formula. Boston did the same thing, first record, follow-up record. And Rush, it was like it seemed like everything that they had accomplished on Moving Pictures and all those things that made Moving Pictures great, they just said, let's just go in an entirely different direction. Which is what's great about Rush, is the fact that they were willing to take chances. They weren't willing to just sit still and re-record the same record over and over again. But I think it was I don't know. I mean, I haven't really thought about this, but maybe you can weigh in on it. I think it may have been the biggest leap musically from record to record in their entire catalog.
Well, I'd say 2112 was the bigger leap because look at you play Caress of Steel and then go play 2112 and tell me otherwise. I mean, but it
Oh,
is other than that, I
Fly
would
By Night had like Vitor and the Snow Dog. I mean, 2112 was in that long prog rock thing. They were sort of dabbling in that between. I mean,
yeah,
Caress of Steel was same thing, but
but the sound and the material unbelievable.
yeah.
So I mean, It's definitely one of the it'd probably be the second choice for me if you had to pick, if you had to go by that kind of rating there, how it took a jump musically. But then other people might say something else because there's
Yeah, yeah,
this group has constantly changed throughout the years, and there's
yeah.
no denying that.
Yep.
They geared towards the synthesizers in the 80s, and then they kind of brought back the guitar more or less in the for the counterparts and stuff like that. So, they always seemed to shift the focus, of what they were doing. So,
Yeah, well, it's they were a band that didn't like to stand still, even though they sang that time stands still. It really didn't for them. It's kind of interesting.
all right. So now we're gonna go with your number 8.
Number 8, something that you need in a car: power windows. Yes.
Mm.
I love this record. I really do. It's another one. I think Presto and Power Windows. And again, having grown up with early Rush, I mean, I know the old catalog a lot better. It was interesting to go back and visit some of these post moving picture records, and I don't remember really liking Power Windows when it came out. There was nothing about it that really stood out. And then I just went back and listened to it, and I was like, dang, this record is pretty darn good. So, and I think sonically it comes off very well. It's kind of a rockin' album, but it still has a lot of those synthesizer pieces to it. And, the big song, The Big Money, which is a great live song as well. So, yeah, Manhattan Project, really cool. I mean, if you listen to that lyrically with everything that's going on with the potential nuclear war again, very timely. So I don't know. I like this
All
record.
right. So Power Windows for me was number 4.
Okay, well, I can
Um,
I can dig that.
so it was my fourth favorite. Like you said, this was actually first tour I ever saw for Rush. It was the Power Windows tour back in 1986, and uh, first time I seen them, man, what an experience! We we ended up going to the Odd in Buffalo, and we didn't get tickets right when they went on sale. We were young, so we had to get them like well after the fact. But we ended up getting if you're familiar with the Odd, we had a section called the Oranges, which is usually not sold for concerts unless it was a really big show. They usually don't sell the orange tickets, but since it was Rush, they sold the tickets, and we got the first row, dead center, pretty much a good shot of the stage. And out of all the Rush shows, I have to say that was probably my favorite set list that they played that night. Just a great set. Played all the songs that I liked from the previous albums, and obviously they touched on a good portion of Power Windows. I think they actually played like 7 or 8 tracks off of it. So Power Windows, like you said, actually there's only 8 tracks on it, so I think they played six or seven off of that one. All right, so getting back to this, the only song that I feel is my favorite on this one, obviously, I would say Manhattan Project that you had mentioned. That's a great
Yeah.
song, great song. And I would say probably my favorite deep cut would be Territories. It's a song that they actually went back and on the Clockwork Angels tour, they put it back in the set, which was great to see. It seems like that for that tour, they went back a little bit into their middle 80s albums for some songs, which was nice to see. But Territories, yeah, great song. Um, Mystic Rhythms, another good one that they played on the tour. Middletown Dreams, Grand Designs, and then remember the song they always dedicated to Rick Azar, Marathon. Rick Azar, of course, being
Uh,
from the big three of Channel 7 in Buffalo, and Channel 7 broadcasted over to Toronto, so the boys from Rush always had they like to mention and give props to those guys because
when I'm in a previous life, when I used to be a runner, I ran 2 full marathons, 2 or 3. No, 2 full marathons. I did like 5 half marathons, but that song was always on my playlist, marathon. So it's a little bit of trivia.
there you go. All right, so that was my number 4. And what do you got? We're back to number 7 now, I believe. So that'll be for you. What's number 7?
Number 7 was one that again I had to go back to really appreciate.
Oh,
Because when it
I'm sorry to
go
cut
ahead.
you off. I never got my number 8 in. I skipped right by it.
Let's go for it. Maybe it's my number 7.
Well, we'll see. Permanent Waves is number 8 for me. Um, I would say when that's not number 7 for you.
No, it's not number 7 for me, but it is on my list. So I'll let you
All right.
talk about it, and then I'll
Yep.
tell you where it is on my
Okay.
list.
All right. So Permanent Waves, number 8. You know, this is the album, where they came off of the let's see, I'm going back here. So many albums to try to track here. It's crazy, but yeah, so obviously Permanent Waves was the first album of the 80s. It was released in January of 1980. Of course, this album went platinum, number 4 rank on the charts. And the big song from this one is probably pretty much everybody's favorite, and that's no doubt is "Spirit of the Radio." That's just that's just a gem that we'll be hearing that one from the till time ever ends. You'll be hearing "Spirit of Radio" everywhere. The other song on the album that I really like as my deep cut, I would say, is "Different Strings."
Hmm.
Definitely another good one. Entre Nos, that's another one. That's a really good album. Number 8. Um, what do you got for the album here?
I got it at number 4.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I grew up. I mean, this was probably the first Rush record that I heard a lot on the radio, because not
Hmm.
only did the Spirit of Radio get a lot of airplay, but so did Free Will. And I always love that line. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. It's just a great Neil Peart line, and funny juxtaposition, if I'm using that word properly. I just thought I'd throw it in there. But yeah, and I think I think sonically it's a very very solid album, and it really kind of sets the plate for what's coming after, which is moving pictures. They had the previous 2 albums, which we probably will mention. The Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres had delved pretty deep into the whole proggy long form story, long form songs, whereas I think Permanent Waves is where they were beginning to shift towards a little bit more radio friendly stuff, and especially those 2 cuts in particular. And then again it follows up with they follow up with moving pictures. But yeah, that era was just an incredible era for the band. It really was. But I love that record. I have a beautiful vinyl copy of it, and it's one of those records that really does sound 10 times better on vinyl than it does in any other format.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So now we're going to, I guess we're going to hit
Number
your number
7.
7. Yeah.
Yeah, my number 7, as I was saying before, it was one I was very conflicted about at the time. And when I was a young man, I was incredibly anti-rap. Anybody that had anything to do with rap was like, ugh, I was too cool for it. But as I've gone back to listen to this record, there's a couple of songs where there's some rap breakdowns in it. I kind of see what the band was trying to accomplish, and I really don't have that hatred towards rap, because I think as I've gotten older, I don't really, I mean, it's either I like it or I don't like it. It doesn't matter if it's a particular genre or not. But the album is, of course, Roll the Bones, and it's a very strong record. It really is, and I think that some material. I mean, the song "Roll the Bones" stayed in the set list for some time, and it's there's an energy to this record that I really like. It's overall, it's just got a good feel to it. It feels like the band is having some fun when they're recording this one.
Yeah, obviously the other song from this album that always seemed to end up in the set list was Dreamline. A lot of times
Yep.
that would actually open up the show. Great opener there. Better than the Big Money. I remember me and my buddy went to go see the Hold Your Fire tour. We're expecting either Spirit of Radio or something really hit the mark there to start the show off, and we got Big Money, and we both looked at each other and said, "Oh boy, that was kind of." A Big Money's a good song, but I just don't think it opens up the show pretty good,
Yeah.
unfortunately, compared to some of the other songs they have in their catalog. But well, the album it had a lot of airplay. You would hear Bravado on the radio. You'd hear Neurotica, Ghost of a Chance. Yeah, very very solid album. And of course, they had the instrumental that they played in concert a little bit there. Where's My Thing? So yeah, it was definitely. I think this album kind of brought him back because if you remember, Presto didn't really have a lot of airplay, on the
Oh,
radio at all. And this put him back on the map, back on the radio for that time period. And
did it make your list?
no, unfortunately, it got bumped off by 2112. I was debating on those two,
Wow.
and I go,
Wow.
you know what, 2112 is just a little bit better than Roll the Bones. So, well, hey, they got so many great albums, like we said. It's just,
That's true. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it's so hard. I mean, if you ever do Led Zeppelin, for me, that's going to be almost like pulling teeth. Except for like the last final five, I probably draw straws. I probably couldn't decide, But yeah. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, a great album. I mean, I still consider this one. I play this one a lot. Still one of my favorite Rush albums. But just didn't make the cut just because there was a few more that were better.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So that was your number 7.
Yep.
For me, I'm going down to 1979. 9, I believe. I think that's the case here. 79.
79.
No,
That's got to,
we're
that's, well,
going
79 should be
77.
Hemispheres, right?
77.
And
Nope,
that's
77.
Farewell to Kings.
Farewell to Kings.
Okay.
Number 7. And what I have for Farewell for Kings is I've always liked this album, really. I really did. It's kind of surprising that it doesn't have, it's one of those albums that it's kind of just doesn't have a lot of songs on it, but the songs that are on here are really solid. Obviously the title cut, Xanadu, Closer to the Heart, obviously was the big radio song, and then Cinderella Man. Definitely, that's one of those sleepers for me. That's the sleeper on the album, which actually Geddy Lee wrote those lyrics and not Neil Peart, which was a rarity. Because usually Lee wrote most of the lyrics or had some outside help on a lot of the songs, but this was one where Lee wrote the lyrics all himself, and
Yeah, I had Farewell to Kings on the list. I mean, I think I mean, I don't know what kind of Rush fan would not have Farewell to Kings on their list. Come on, let's
And
be honest. I did number 5.
number 5.
So
Okay.
yeah, it was up there, but a lot for the same reasons. I think Xanadu was such a great concert song too. It just the way it,
Yep.
just all the build up and everything like that. I mean, it was just a really really cool song. And of course, Closer to the Heart. I mean, just it's very again radio friendly, kind of a nice song to sing along to. I think maybe the only issue there is that it was a song that Geddy really struggled to sing later on in his career because it was so high up there.
Hmm.
But yeah, just a great song. I think there's a pretty cool live version on Show of Hands, if I remember correctly, that has an extended jam at the end of it and whatnot. But yeah, I like that record. And a little bit of trivia there, Mr. Suto. The cover shot is actually a combination of the Toronto skyline in the background, but that broken up building that was in Buffalo, New York, which is out by where we live.
Do you know what the building was?
No clue. It's interesting because I've tried to figure that out. I know there was an anniversary box set that just came out, and I actually just interviewed the guy Andy Curran, formerly of Coney Hatch. We were talking about that Envy of None record that Alex Lifeson's on, and it was on my list of questions to ask him, but I never did because he pulled together all the archival material. But yeah, it was a photo shoot. They found an abandoned building and they in the Buffalo area because I was like, man, you ever found that? I would love to see that on put like a historic marker or something that this is the former location of, the cover shot of Farewell to Kings. I mean, I'm assuming with the building have been falling down like it was, it's probably been demolished and there's something in its place, but it would be really cool to find out where the heck it was. But I've gone on a quest to figure it out, but I've never been able to figure it out. So maybe if there's a listener out there or a viewer, that would be a cool project for you if we could figure it out.
Yeah, another cool thing was, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Primus actually took this album out on the road and played it in its
Yep, I remember
entirety
that.
with Les Claypool just recently.
Yep.
I think they just did it this past summer. So yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have seen it, but they didn't really come anywhere near here, so we never got the chance to.
Yeah, I think they might have had a date scheduled, but it was canceled because of COVID or something. But yeah, they were going out around that time. But I don't know. I heard some of the recordings of. I'm not a huge Primus fan. I'm not a Primus hater, but I'm definitely not a huge fan. But the recordings I heard, it's just I don't know. It didn't quite. It didn't do it for me. I mean, this is. But I think the thing is too, like when another band tries to do another band's record, if it's a record that everybody's just so familiar with and so in love with, it really becomes a huge challenge.
Hmm.
Whereas Tedeschi Trucks just did a version of Layla and other sorted love songs, and I thought that was great. But they had a really very unique approach to the record, and they're great players. I don't know. I thought the Primus thing was just a little bit. I don't know. They almost tried to recreate it a little bit too close, and it didn't really offer anything new.
All right,
So,
well, we're gonna
and
go down.
all you Primus fans, please direct your hatred towards me in the comments. I will accept it.
All right, so we're gonna go with your number 6 now.
My number 6 is it's behind me, folks. It's the first one. It's a record that needs to get some love and should show up on everybody's top 10 list because of its historic value. But not only that, it's just a great rock record. I mean, What You're Doing, Working Man. Need I say more? The only thing missing from this record is, of course, Neil Peart, or Neil Peart, however you'd like to pronounce it. But man, to me, it's just a good old fashioned power trio record. No synthesizers, no fanciness to it. Just a good old fashioned straight ahead rock album. And that's why I think it is deserving of being in the top 10, and for that matter, in the top 6. And I don't know if you're gonna have it on your list, but I'm guessing not, just by that stare that you're giving me. I don't hear any dogs barking though. There's no dogs barking, so this isn't a horrible choice, right? We've had dogs barking on previous choices.
Well, this is actually one that, if you know who Ted is, Ted Mock.
Oh yes, I know Ted.
Yeah, he calls this his least favorite Rush album, and I couldn't figure out why. But anyhow, me and you actually got to agree. Yay!
Wow, look at that. We got the same
number
spot.
6. Yep, same spot.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, how you cannot like this album is beyond my belief. I mean, if you want to take a shot at an album, I would take it at Snakes and Arrows, which is my least favorite Rush album. Yeah, I said that just so you know. It was me. Yeah, so yeah, this is number 6. Finding My Way, In the Mood. They used to run those two songs together and close out the show many a times. Just great songs. And I remember for the longest time they wouldn't play Working Man. They just never played Working Man. And finally, like, I think their last 4 tours, they finally added it to the set list and it pretty much stayed in there. So yeah, it was great to see that one. Getty used to say after the song, "Well, we hope to see you again." He always kind of gave you we might be back, we might not, because at that point they didn't know. But yeah, so you know, Working Man. Does it get any better than that? That's the song that the radio that out of all the songs on the album, that's the one that usually always gets you hear that one for sure. But like you said,
yeah, I guess it took off in Cleveland. So that's where really they got their introduction into America, just because it was getting some airplay in Cleveland. But I don't know, as I said, I what I like about this record is there's not a lot of bells and whistles. I mean, sonically, I could see it's muddy. I mean, it doesn't have really great production qualities to it, but the performance is just spirited. It's just 3 young guys living out their dream, man, just cranking out some great tunes. And it's amazing what they became after this record. I mean, the evolution is incredible, but still, it's a, there's I think that a first record for almost any band is very important, and it really kind of shows you what they're made of. And even though Neil's not on this particular record, and I don't think Rush wouldn't have been Rush without Neil. But and I will say, John Rutsey, who was the original drummer, I think it's a shame that he was not included in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction when the band was inducted. I think that he should have been, even though he was only on the one record. I think it was still an important record because really it made Rush a national act, and on some levels that may have been what attracted Neil to want to join him in the first place. So I don't think John gets the credit that he deserves, and certainly he's not the greatest rock drummer in the history of music, but man, he was no slouch either to play with these guys, because Alex and Geddy, they're great players. You had to be pretty good to keep up with them.
Yeah, yeah, yep. All right, well, that should take us to number 5. We're halfway home here.
Well, I gave you my 5 already, so I had Farewell to Kings. So it's up to you to see if there's something different on the list.
All right, mine is actually going to be the third album from the band, Caress of Steel. This album kind of doesn't get a lot of love either. It actually closes out that first era of Rush, as they stated on All the World's a Stage. But Caress of Steel, yeah, I mean, Lakeside Park, great song. Dark Horse is a Fountain of Lameth. Just another one of those. That was another one of those long songs, but it definitely flows pretty nicely. And of course, your theme song. I think I'm going bald. Oh wait,
Oh,
you
I
already
don't. I
are.
don't think. I don't think I'm going bald. I know I'm going bald.
But that was another weird song, but it definitely got airplay. They used to play it on here, a lot more frequently probably than now. And then obviously, this album, Bastille Day, kicked it off. They actually used to open the show up with that song back in that era as well. But a solid album. Kind of surprised myself where it ended up on here compared to some of these other ones. But give it a listen, and you'll thank me if you haven't heard this one in a while. And it definitely listen to the remaster. Definitely a lot better. It really enhances everything. Because that's what I did. I ended up getting this one just very recently, and when I heard the remaster, I said, "Wow, what a difference compared to the original recording that I had of it."
Yeah, I'm just not a huge fan of this record. I mean, I don't hate it. I mean, there's people that really hate it and crap all over it, but it to me is like, well, it's interesting. I guess even in just kind of glancing right now at the Wikipedia page you're talking, I mean, this is the record label almost dropped him after this record. And it was close. I mean, it's some good cuts on a Bastille Day. I mean, I agree with that. Lakeside Park, those two are amazing. I think I'm going bald. It's a little hokey. I mean, it really is. Even though, I mean, I get it. I mean, I've been going bald for a long time, so I mean, that I can relate to that song on some level. But yeah, it just, to me, it just fell flat. I think this suffered from some, like you said, you were talking about the remastering. I think this might have suffered from some production issues as well. And I felt like Fly By Night has some very strong material on it too, but I just don't think the production was quite up to what they eventually were kind of known for. You know what I mean?
In which we would see it really pick up on 2112 and forward, obviously.
Right. Yeah. I mean, 2112, the production definitely improves significantly,
Oh
and
yeah.
the material is very challenging and everything. But I mean, really, it isn't until, I don't think it's until Farewell to Kings that we really start to hear some serious sonic masterpieces.
All right. So what do you got for 4?
I think I already gave you 4, which was Permanent Waves. So what do you got
Okay.
for 4?
Well, I've got Power Windows, which you already had, so we went through
We're
that.
stealing all each other's thunder, aren't we?
Well, we're going down to 3. Interesting.
Number 3. Well, you know what my number 2 is, so this one's got to be in your top 3. I'm thinking it's Test for Echo. No, I'm just kidding. That was a test. Did you see that? See what I did there? It is indeed. Speaking of going bald, you can see my hemispheres up here. Ooh, I love this record. And, one of my greatest regrets in life is I used to own this absolutely gorgeous red vinyl version of Hemispheres that I think was absconded by a girlfriend at some point throughout my young life. And man, I loved it. It was the first piece of colored vinyl that I ever had. And as you may know, Joey, I think you do, that I love me some colored vinyl and try to get my hands on it. And really that love started with this particular record. But it wasn't just the color of the vinyl. I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. Cygnus X1 Part 2, and if I say that right, I don't know. But La Via Strangiato,
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. The
Mm-hmm.
Trees, Circumstances, Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. The more that things change, the more they stay the same. I felt like there was a definite improvement from Farewell the Kings in terms of just a little bit. There was just a little bit more energy, and man, they were really, their creative juices were really flowing on this particular record, and this one shows up as number one. I mean, I know when I do my lists, and I'm sure you do the same thing. I try to look through the other lists and see where, if my rankings are so far off from everybody, but this one shows up at the top on a handful of Rush ranking lists as their best record of all time.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, for me, it was also number 3. Wow, we got
Yeah.
two of them right on the money. Let's see if there's going to be say if our number 1 is going to be the same, but because we already know your number 2 is different. So
Yes, my number 2 is number 2-1-1-2. So
yes,
that was
that's
that was
why.
appropriate.
Right.
Yes.
All right. So like you had touched on this album, obviously Cygnus X1. Book 2, that's the takes up the whole first side, kind of like 2112 does on 2112. But on the second side, now this is a second side. You take this second side and put it on 2112, it'd be my favorite album. But we got Circumstances, which is my deep cut, and then we got my favorite song, which no doubt in the world, my favorite Rush song without a doubt, because there was unrest in the forest.
There's trouble with the trees.
Yes.
Those maples, those angry little maples, they want more sunlight.
First Rush song I ever heard on the radio, and I just fell in love with it. Unbelievable. I just love that song. And to see it live and see Neil going nuts on the kit. Oh my God, what a phenomenal. I can still have visions of that song the first time I seen it live. And I got to see it a few times live, but thankfully I got to see it. It's kind of a short song, but it definitely is one of the favorite Rush song of mine of all out of the whole catalog.
Well, I don't know if I have a favorite. It's one I haven't thought of. Interesting. Oh well.
All
So does that
right.
bring us to your number 2? Because you knew my number
Yeah,
2.
my number 2, which I am shocked is not on your list.
Uh
I
oh.
am I am utterly shocked at you for not having this on your list.
Did I mess up? Is that what you're
Test
trying to tell me?
for Echo. No, just kidding. Okay. Yeah, you definitely have messed up on this one, buddy. Well, at least in my opinion. You like what you like, Grace Under Pressure, no doubt
Ah,
my
yeah.
second favorite Rush album. So, yeah, this came out, right after Signals. And the one thing about Grace Under Pressure is that I love this album because I play it all the way through without any hesitation. I just know every track inside and out, especially the beginning with Distant Early Warning, which is the song that broke them on the radio for this album, and then Red Sector A got a lot of airplay as well. But probably my favorite song on the album is actually The Body Electric, 1001. Excellent song. I was so mad that on the Clockwork Angels tour we were actually supposed to get that. They were alternating that song on the tour with another song, and for some weird reason, Rush decided to throw us a curveball that night. And they totally played something that neither of those two songs that they were alternating. They threw us a third song. It was the tour debut of Limelight.
Mm.
I love Limelight, but I've seen it live like every show I've ever seen them pretty much. So for me, it really was. I would have rather heard the Body Electric, just because that was my favorite song off of Grace Under Pressure. But just an early warning, another great song, like I had mentioned. You're not too keen on this album. I don't know if you have favorite cuts off of it, or if you just hate this album like you do Test for Echo. I don't know. Uh, but they the tour for this album was on MTV. They played it and they released it on a DVD. Enemy Within. That's when they started playing the whole part of Fear, the trilogy, and then Between the Wheels. That's a great song to end the album on. But just a great album. The only thing I'm disappointed on I was unable to see them on the Grace Under Pressure tour.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen it, but what can you do?
I mean, I don't hate this record. I mean, this is probably 11, 12 for me. I mean, it's one that would probably show up in the bottom four a year from now if we were to do something. I mean, it just I don't know. It's the tough part is that I think there's probably three or four that people can agree are sort of near the bottom of the heap. But even at that, I mean, there's people that say Caress of Steel is trash, and here
Hmm.
you have it right up in your top 10, and I can't argue with that. I mean, I'm sure there's people that, as much as we pick on Test for Echo, they say, oh, that really is a great record. And I know that because I got a guy that comes into a bar that I work at. It's always like, oh, you should really listen to that again. It's really a good record. And I think, too, like you said, it's almost important that, especially when you're doing these lists that you mentioned, like, oh, well, this was the first record I heard, or this was the first tour that I saw live, because those things all really influence your taste when it comes to a band as well. So
Hmm.
yeah, we have sentimental favorites, and then there's maybe some universal favorites. But I'm assuming that you and I got the same number one, and as tricky as it would be to pick another one, I don't know. I just think it's such a great album that you can't knock it, right? And that
So,
is, of course,
oh,
number one.
we're not gonna mention the actual name. We're just gonna talk about it, right? No.
We could do that. I mean, people would actually know what it is, but
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
we've actually already mentioned the name because I said it was the first tour that I ever saw was the Moving Pictures tour. But yeah, just I don't even know. I don't even know what we could add about this record. It's just so good. I mean, there's not a millisecond to me on Moving Pictures that isn't perfect. Funny story. I was working at a bar the other night. Well, I work at a bar in Medina,
Hmm.
and we have vinyl record night on Saturday nights when I'm working. So we put on Farewell to Kings, and there was a buddy of mine who he's in his early 40s. So now that marijuana is decriminalized, he went and smoked a little of this marijuana, and he got hired to kite. And he comes in and we're listening to Farewell to Kings, and he's like, "Oh my God, this record is changing my life." And I said, "Listen, you think this record's good? You should listen to this record." So I loaned him my copy of Moving Pictures that I had. And evidently he went home and smoked more marijuana and listened to Moving Pictures and was like, wow, dude, this is even better. So I don't know what that proves. It was just a funny story and true. So for all you marijuana smokers, Moving Pictures is the number one Rush album for marijuana smokers, according to my poll of one person, because I myself, I don't smoke. No, I don't smoke it no more, even if I'm on a train to Bangkok. Right, Joey?
What is your favorite track off this album?
I think it's the Camera Eye. I really do.
Okay.
It's a fun song. I think Camera Eye doesn't get a lot of airplay, so I mean, like you said, Limelight. You heard it live, you're like, oh my god, I ain't time to hear Limelight. Limelight's a great song, very straight ahead. YYZ, same thing. You hear that one a lot. It's pretty cool. I think La Via Strangiato is a little bit stronger in terms of instrumental, but YYZ is great. Um, Red Barchetta would probably be a close second. I love Witch Hunt. I mean, I love Vital Signs. I mean, they're all great. And I've seen them all perform live. I mean, on the original tour for Moving Pictures, they did it all. They did every cut off the record except for Witch Hunt. but then
Mm.
they brought Witch Hunt out later on subsequent tours, and I don't know if that was had to do with technology, where maybe they just didn't have the right patches for their synths or something to perform it live. But that was the only one they didn't do on the first tour. But yeah, just I don't know, just a great record. It's I mean, it's just a great record. It's just great. To me. I mean, it's in my top 10 favorite records of all time by anybody for that matter. It's just fantastic. Listen,
Yeah, it's definitely, I think if you're a Rush fan, that was just probably the first album many people probably bought. And if you're new to Rush and you started buying their catalog, it's probably the one that you probably bought immediately after whatever one you have right now. So,
yeah, and
excuse me.
I think it's also one of those records that like even if it's not your personal favorite Rush record, you still acknowledge it as the greatest Rush record. I mean, that's at
Right.
least that what I mean. It is. It's just a great record. I mean, there's times I would rather listen to Hemispheres or whatever, but I mean, every time I go back to this record, I'm just like, I'm never disappointed. And side two, I think side one is the one that gets all the love and got all the radio play. But man, side two is there is not any drop off on side two. I mean, this is no filler, no filler at all. It's just an incredible record and sonically incredible.
Hmm.
The album artwork, the packaging, I mean, everything. It just knocked everything out of the park.
Yeah, I think so. You just mentioned artwork. Also, that was one thing I forgot to mention on the Grace Under Pressure. It's probably,
Yeah,
great album cover. That's
yeah,
one of their best for sure. But yeah, this one, they did that trilogy where I think it was on this album, the three in a row. It was this album, Signals, and Grace Under Pressure. They had those three songs and they played them all together in concert on the Grace Under Pressure tour. Witch Hunt, Enemy Within, and the one from Signals too. They played them all as part of the trilogy. Finally, I think that was their plan the whole time,
yeah,
to do something like that, which was pretty unique. I don't think they. I'm not sure if they ever did that again, but it was definitely it was the weapon. And the weird thing was they started off with part three, which is on this album. So it's
yeah,
like, yeah, how some bands try to tease them and come up with a part two or a part. So Witch Hunt was part three, and then the next one was part two, and then they did the Enemy Within off of Grace Under Pressure. So interesting,
yeah.
to say the least on that. But my dark horse track, the one that I feel that is the song that's really awesome. It doesn't get the what it should is Vital Signs. Just love that song. That's just a classic, one of the best of the catalog, and I picked Limelight as my overall favorite. It was a tough choice because, like you said, you could have picked any of those songs on side one as
Yeah.
the best song on the album by a mile, but they're all neck and neck. But I think Limelight is just a little bit better than all of them. And Tom Sawyer, it's probably this. They always say that that's the song that everybody knows and everything else. And I'm not one of those that's sick of hearing it because obviously they play that one on the radio still all the time to this day. If you hear Rush, there's usually a good chance of 1 out of 5 songs is they're going to play Tom Sawyer. But I don't get sick of that song. That's another thing. There's certain songs you get sick of, which we're going to have to do an episode on soon, of songs that are just overplayed to death. There's many of them. We'll get into that for another time. But for this band, what an album. You
Yeah.
can't say too much about it.
Well,
Uh,
those first 10 seconds of Tom Sawyer, I mean, they're incredible. Just the way that song just punches you right in the face. I mean, the millisecond that Tom Sawyer starts, it just punches you right in the throat. You're like, man. And then it's just great. It's just a great and that sets the stage for the record. I mean, it's just a great ride. It's everything that's great about not just rock music but Canadian music. I mean, it just was. I know we're both big Triumph fans, and Triumph had their Allied Forces, which was kind of their big one, and Rush had Moving Pictures right around the same era, as a matter of fact. I mean, that was a great year for Canadian rock bands.
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
All
so
right.
the cool thing was actually on the Vapor Trails tour, they actually opened with Tom Sawyer, which is something they really didn't do too much so later on in their career. So that was pretty cool to see them open with it, which kind of brought it brought a whole different atmosphere to the show.
Yeah, it's always great. They opened with 2112 the first time I saw them, just the Overture Temples of Syrinx, which is
Mm,
man, that's great opening. It was wow. They had like the star with the naked guy in front of it.
hmm
Started out really small and then it got bigger and then But
mm,
yeah, I mean that's a great one. Spirit of Radio is a great opening track. But
yep.
I mean, I said they were a good live band. I mean they didn't just I don't mean to pick on Leonard Skinner, but Leonard Skinner. I mean you're getting Sweet Home Alabama as the last song of the night, and they're going to encore with Freebird, and they might change up a couple of songs here and there, but Rush. I mean, hell, one tour to the next, you never knew what you were going to get, and that was pretty cool. I mean, it's not like they were the Grateful Dead playing a different set every night, but at least from tour to tour, they gave you a good, like you said, a good chunk of the new album, and then they'd throw in some deep cuts, and they wouldn't just play them year after year. So when they did show back up in the set list, it was kind of cool.
All right. Well, since we're talking live, now we're gonna rank our top two favorite Rush live albums of all time, which was another great idea you had come up with. I gotta hand it to you. So what would you say your number two favorite is? We'll start off and work our way to number one.
Oh, well, number two is my sentimental favorite, but it's my number two in terms of, I think, quality and in terms of a live album. It is All the World's a Stage, and we are leading players. But it just, to me, again, I think it caught Rush at a very raw period in their live performance. It's just the three of them. It's just, plug it into the amp and let her rip. And it was my first exposure to the band because I had a friend of mine. I mean, I remember hearing it for the first time. He actually, the first thing he played was the drum solo. He was like, "You got to hear this drummer. He's incredible." So that was my first introduction to Rush, was the drum solo on All the World's a Stage. But I just think, there's just a lot of great cuts. It's a lot of fun. It's still a fun listen. It's still just good old fashioned rock and roll, baby. So All the World's a Stage.
All right. Well, mine is going to be a show of hands, which came out in 1989. It was recorded throughout it was mostly the Hold Your Fire tour, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, I really like the sound. Obviously, as we progressed through the 80s and the live albums, the sound quality got even better, and maybe that's one of the reasons why it was kind of hard to choose between this one and the one I picked as number one. But this album, although it doesn't have like a lot of their older material on, it focuses more on the mid 80s there, mid to late 80s, and I just love the sound of it, and it takes me back to those concerts because I seen them on this tour where they were playing all these songs. So, and although it's like where they didn't pick one night, they played they picked a song from this venue, so it wasn't like all one night. Like some of their releases that they're doing now, they're putting on like complete concerts from a specific show on some of their anniversary box sets, which is pretty unique. But for this one, they kind of mixed it up. You got some from UK shows and you got some US shows, and but overall, it's a pretty solid effort, and I really enjoy this one. So that's my number two. What do you got for your
Yeah,
number one?
well, I'll comment on your number two. I mean, I
Oh,
like that
sorry.
record too. I definitely do. It's I think sonically, it's far and away above All the World's a Stage. My number one, and this was tough because there was a lot of them. Now, my honorable mention goes to R30 because I love that intro piece. When they do the instrumental from all the old tunes and everything like that. But I think that number one has got to be just based on length, quality of the recording, Getty's voice, the whole nine yards. It is Rush in Rio.
Oh,
Yes, I love that.
wow.
Yeah, number one, numero uno, without a doubt.
Yeah, I got the DVD, but I actually my choice is a little bit different than that one. Yeah, you're right. It's definitely a lot of good stuff on there because it goes, that was recorded later on, so there was a
Yep.
lot more albums under the belt there. where they could pick it from. The
And the
song
crowd, man, the
choices.
crowd's insane. Like it's you could tell that that fans in Rio, I guess, are just incredibly loud and attentive. I think it was a pretty. I mean, you've seen the DVD. I haven't. I was listening to the audio recording, but I mean, it sounds like it was one of those just massive shows. I mean, the
Hmm.
crowd was just super loud, and the band seemed to really feed off the energy of the audience, which was kind of cool. So I like that. I liked how it felt live. I think the only criticism I have of a show of hands, is that there were parts of it that didn't sound live. You know, it felt a little bit too close to the studio, and you didn't necessarily feel the crowd throughout a lot of the songs. Whereas I think Rush and Rio, they're kind of, they're definitely in it, and definitely All the World's a Stage. I mean, the crowd's pretty prominent in the mix.
All right, well, my number one is actually going to take the era of Rush where they really came into being, and that obviously is going to be Exit Stage Left. Uh, basically that's the one that introduced me to live Rush. Recorded throughout 80 and 81, and came out in late 81. And so it's got the trees on there, which is my favorite song. It's got opens with Spirit of Radio. You don't get it too much better than that, that's for sure. And they end with La Villa. They got Tom Sawyer, Free Will. It's just an overall solid set of songs from that era. The only downside I would say is that they don't have the 2112 on it, which is a surprise. Because you got to remember on that song too. There's a lot of times live they would take and just do like the first two parts and then the
Right.
finale. They would mix it up, and then there were shows where they would do the whole thing. The whole 2112. So it just depended on what they were doing at the time and where in the set it fell. When it was an encore, they usually just shortened it up a little bit. You know.
Yeah, I think they made a conscious effort in at least the first three live records to not have any repeats.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was, honestly. Because yeah, I mean, they opened with. I was at that. That is. I mean, I love that record because I was at that show on and that tour. But nothing from All the World's a Stage is on Exit Stage Left, to the best of
Hmm.
my knowledge. I'm almost, and I think it goes the same for Show of Hands. So if you take those first three live records, I mean, yeah, they cover the era, but they also looks like they took care not to just repeat stuff that had been on the
Hmm.
previous two. And I don't know if they were going to try to continue that tradition. Obviously, later on,
Yeah.
things kind of evolved, and they wound up putting on a lot of live recordings, and the industry changed and all that. But it was like, I mean, I'm trying to think. So they did four records, then they had a live record, and then was there four before Exit Stage Left? You would have had what? Farewell to King, Hemispheres, Permanent Waves, Moving Pictures. So yeah, they did four there, and
Hmm.
then I think they had four more before they put out Show of Hands. So it seemed to be kind of a pattern. I don't know if that was. I mean, I assume that was intentional, but I appreciate the fact that they didn't just repeat the songs from one live album to the next.
Well, there was one on Show of Hands, Closer to the Heart. They redid it on that one. But you
Yeah,
actually mentioned that one actually earlier on in our episode here. So,
very
you,
different version though. That
yeah,
version of Closer to the Heart was like a super extended jam. But is that on Exit Stage Left? No, I don't
Closer to the
remember.
Heart. Yeah, it is on. It is on there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the only repeat song.
yeah, but it's a repeat, but it's not even close to. I mean, it's the beginning part, but yeah, that extended jam at the end on Show of Hands is pretty cool.
Yeah, so overall, yeah, and they've released so many live albums over the years now too. That's
Yeah,
something, I mean, this wasn't an easy task, to go. I mean, I don't have all of them per se, because they started releasing like one for every tour pretty much after the Russian Rio was the Vapor Trails tour, so that was yeah, so pretty much after that they were releasing live album pretty much from every tour they did almost after
yeah.
that. Snakes and Arrows live, R30, R40. Time Machine live in Cleveland, Clockwork Angels tour, so yeah, so definitely a band that they understood how good they were live, and people wanted to have that available. They wanted to see the live product. If they couldn't be there live, they wanted to see it, and the band was smart to do what they did on releasing all these great live albums.
Yeah, it's not a, and it's not like they didn't have a lot of material to draw from. And I think that probably as the band evolved, I mean their fan base probably changed a little bit too. I think there's people that like one era better than the others. Maybe some that they lost along the way. I mean, I know, as I said, post moving pictures. I mean, they were a very different group. I mean, I didn't. I mean, I kind of strayed away for a little while before I came back because you had a certain expectation, especially during the classic rock era. Boston, AC/DC, all these bands are putting out records, and they were very formulaic, and you sort of expected that. So when Rush decided to move too far away from that, it was a bit of a shock to the system. I think even Van Halen had a little bit of pushback when they did 1984 because of the heavy reliance on keyboards. But I don't know, that's what everybody did in the 80s, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to a conclusion of another great episode. So, yeah, leave those comments. Let us know what your favorite Rush albums are. We're always, if you got Test for Echo on there, we would love to stick that right in Tom's face for sure. Uh,
uh, yeah, folks, but again, I mean, the purpose of these isn't for Joey and I to pretend that we're smarter than any of you. It's just we're offering our opinion because it's just something that
we
we
do.
can talk about. And it gives the great thing about it is when you go back and you revisit some of these records, then you can listen for yourself and experience the music all over again. I mean, that's what I think. I mean, I think that's what the appeal of a lot of these top 10 videos are, is it does give people a chance to kind of compare what other people are thinking, but it also makes you go back and say, is Test for Echo really that bad of a record? Or maybe maybe it's good the way I remember it, or is Moving Pictures really so perfect, blah blah blah. But either way, choice in music is subjective, but is if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice, and
And
you got
with
free will. You got free will to pick which ones you want, and then you can live in the limelight.
and with that, we'll put a wrap on this episode, Tom.
Just like Power Windows, right? No, Roll the Bones. Just like Roll the Bones. We'll put a wrap on this record.
All right. Well, until next time, folks, we'll be seeing you. Give us some comments and let us know what bands you want us to do. We're more than willing to rank anybody that you have. Till next
You
time,
got it. All right.
Joe and
And thanks
Tom
as always, Joey.
signing
I
off.
appreciate you having me on.